to another episode in the series of the Bible in 365 days, where we try to go through this King James version of the Bible within 365 days. We had finished Genesis yesterday, so now in day 15 we move into a new book, the second book of Moses, which is called Exodus. Today we go through Exodus chapter 1 verse 1 to chapter 4 verse 31. This is basically the origins or the story of Moses. But before we even get into the story of Moses, chapter 1 really introduces us into the current timeline within that era of Moses. So Jacob, Joseph, and all of that generation had passed away. So we can see years have gone past since the Israelites have been in Egypt, and their number grew exponentially, and to the point now there is a new ruler of Egypt. There is a new pharaoh in Egypt who has no idea who this Joseph person is, this great Joseph who had once saved the nation of Egypt, who was the reason why Egypt continued to that very day. All he knows is that he is the ruler of Egypt, and the Israelites or the Hebrews who were living in Egypt, who are not part of the Egyptian community, were not seen as part of the Egyptian community, their numbers have grown to the point that they surpass the actual Egyptians who live in the land. So he sees this as a threat, and instead of integrating with the Israelites, he pushes them even further away, where he comes up with this idea, for he fears if Egypt is attacked one day that the Israelites will actually join their enemies and help to conquer the Egyptians. So he has this idea of trying to slow down the growth of the Israelites in terms of numbers. So in order to try and slow down the numbers, you have to stop the amount of births that are happening, and he realizes that you have to stop the birth of the males within the Israelite people. So he instructs all the midwives to actually report when a male child is born so that the male can be killed, but the daughters, they can be allowed to survive, because there's probably this idea that if the daughters are there, they will eventually marry Egyptian men, so that way you're still removing the Israelites. But luckily the midwives, they fear who God is, and they understand that we cannot kill children who belong to God. So they save the lives of the males within the Hebrew community. And the Pharaoh realizes this, so he instructs the people throughout all of Egypt that if a Israeli child or Hebrew child is born, if it is a male, they should be thrown into the Nile River. If it is a girl, she can be saved. So now this is law throughout the whole land, that if you give birth to a Hebrew son, you have to throw them into the river so that they may die. And this is where we come into the story of Moses being born. Now, Moses is conceived by two Levites, a man and a woman, so they are Hebrew, and they give birth to him. And Moses' mother does not want to lose her son in this manner, so she comes up with this idea of creating a little basket that she will set on the river and place Moses in and allow him to float away, not knowing where he will go, but she has faith that her son will find safety. And as she is doing this, her daughter is watching what she does, and she places Moses in the Nile River and allows him to move off, not knowing where he will go, but she still has the faith that her son will find safety. And through that faith, Moses did find safety before, because he was found by the daughter of Pharaoh, who was out in the river with her maids, and she finds this baby and she wants to keep this baby. And one of the daughter who was actually watching this whole thing happen approaches Pharaoh's daughter and says, "Hey, I can help you find a woman who can nurse this baby for you so that he will be in full health." And she agrees, and that girl finds Moses' mother, who nurses her child. So she saw her faith come into fruition. All the actions that she did actually saved her baby. And Moses got to grow up within the Egyptian household. And you can obviously know that when you grow up within royalty, there's a lot of things that you learn. So Moses is a person who knows how to read. Moses is a person who knows how to write as well. And now, as Moses grows older, he sees this Egyptian man who was, treating an Israeli or a Hebrew man in a very harsh manner, and he tries to stop him, but the Egyptian refuses. So eventually, Moses fights and accidentally kills this Egyptian. And when no one was watching, Moses decided to bury the man in sand, and he thought, okay, no one knows about what I have done. But a few days later, he tries to stop an argument between two Israelites. And the Israelites say, "What are you going to do to us? Are you going to kill us in the same manner you killed that Egyptian?" So Moses knew that people do know of what he has done. And the word actually went out to the Pharaoh who would execute Moses because of the actions that he has done. So Moses decided that he is going to run away from Egypt and embarks off into lands that he does not know. And he runs off to the land of Midian. And when he is there, he finds himself near this well, and he sees daughters of Jethro who come to water their sheep. But a lot of the herdsmen who were there keep brushing them off and don't want to help them. But Moses ends up helping the woman and allowing them to get water for their sheep so that they can go back home early. And Jethro, their father, sees that his daughters are all back home early. He's like, "How did this happen?" And they explain that there's this man who decided to help us. And Jethro asks his daughters to bring Moses in so that he may eat bread with them. And in turn, he ends up allowing Moses to stay within his household, and he gives him one of his daughters to marry, and they do have children. And over time, as Moses is living with Jethro, he becomes a shepherd. And now, when you are a shepherd, it is your duty to watch over things that do not belong to you. You have to lay your life on the line over things that do not belong to you. You have to treat this flock like it is yours, even though you know it's not yours. You will fight for them. If one goes missing, you will spend the entire day trying to bring that one back into the flock, making sure that all of them are safe and protected. Now, while he is out herding the sheep, he comes across this bush, and he's looking at it, and he sees that it is on fire, but it is not burning. So he has this intrigue to see what it actually is, and a voice comes out of the bush and starts speaking to Moses. And that is the voice of God started speaking to Moses and instructing him that, "I need you to go back to the land of Egypt for me to help free my people from the harsh hand of Pharaoh." And now Moses is pretty hesitant to go back to Egypt, that he even comes up with excuses. He listens to what God had to say to him, and then he says, "Okay, but if I go back there, no one will believe I've been sent to come and talk to them, because I don't even know what your name is. What are they going to say when they say, 'What is his name?'" So God tells Moses what his name is. He says, "I am. You will tell the people that I am has sent you." And God even shows Moses what he will do to try and prove to the people that he in fact is sent by God. God says, "First you will take your rod, throw it onto the ground, and it will turn into a snake. and when you pick it back up, it will turn back into a rod. And Moses did this in front of the bush as God has instructed him, and it actually happened. And then God said, take your hand and put it on your chest, which he does. He says, look at it. And he looked at his hand and he realized that it was filled with the leprosy, which scared him a little bit because there is no cure for leprosy at that time. And then God said, put it back on your chest, which Moses did, and his hand went back to normal. And he said, finally, if they don't listen to that, I want you to go and fetch water from the river and pour it onto the ground. And when you pour this water onto the ground, it will turn into blood. And now Moses is listening to what God is saying, and then he comes up with another excuse again. He says, can't you pick somebody else, because I am not someone who knows how to speak well. I have a stutter. I'm not great with speech, especially now you're asking me to speak in front of this crowd. How will I actually deliver your message? And this kind of angers God, because he says, do not doubt what I'm sending you to do. I know why I have chosen you. And eventually he says, I will tell your brother to go out and meet you, and you will relay all the messages that I have given to you to your brother, and your brother will be your mouthpiece, so that you may deliver this message to the children of Israel. And so Moses takes heed to what God has instructed him to do. And now we have to remember the story of Moses and how he actually got to this point, and why we see that God has selected Moses. I want you to remember that Moses is the one who wrote the book of Genesis. Moses is the one who is writing this current book right now. Remember, Moses grew up in a household where people read and write. In the past, all of Hebrew history was always passed down via word of mouth. But we needed someone who would actually write all of this down. And because Moses grew up in a household where people read and write, he was the one who took that history that was passed down and wrote it down. As again, Moses being someone who ended up being a shepherd, it goes back to what I was saying. He is being sent by God now to go and find his flock and return it to him. And a shepherd is one who will do as the master has instructed them, and they will take care of their flock as if it is their own, even though they know who it belongs to. They will never take it as theirs. They know who it has to go to eventually. So that's why Moses is being the one who's being selected by God. And Moses decided that he was going to tell his father Jethro that he has been sent by God to go back to Israel. And Jethro says, I will not stand in your way. Do as God has instructed you to do. And God did speak to Moses yet again. He says, those who were looking to kill you are no longer alive. So it is safe for you to go back to Egypt and fulfill what I have asked you to do. So Moses gathers his wife and children, and they head back to Egypt. And on the way to Egypt, they are met by Aaron, Moses' older brother, who was told by God to go out and seek your brother, for he is on the way to Egypt. And Aaron embraces his brother. You have to realize that Aaron is someone who hasn't seen Moses since he was born, because Moses and Aaron did not grow up together. Once Moses was born, he was placed on that river. So you have to think about the faith that Aaron has in God, to be told that this strange man that you haven't seen ever, who is coming, is the brother who your mother had placed in the river. And Aaron does not question this, and he goes out to meet his brother and embraces him and listens to everything that Moses has been told by God. And he goes back with Moses and gathers all the elders of Israel, and they show and demonstrate all the things and say all the things that God had told Moses. And the people believed and started to worship God, for they knew that all their cries about the hardship that they had been facing in Egypt was heard by God, and it was the time for them to be saved. So their salvation was going to come by the hand of God. And that brings us to the end of Exodus chapter 1 verse 1 to chapter 4 verse 31. Now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you now and forever. Thank you so much for watching this video.